All right, these are the Habitat demos for Friday, August 25th. We've got a couple for you today, some stuff that's not complete just yet, but we got a lot of progress on it and we want to share it with you, and then some stuff that we'll be pushing out pretty soon. While we start with CM, who's going to show us some changes to how you can build some plans.
All right. Let's share screen. Okay. So can everyone see my text editor?
Yep.
All right. So one of the things that has been, well, basically impossible to do until now, or has been impossible to do, is having sort of a unified way to run multiple Habitat servers, sort of like as a group. So classic example would be like the sort of sidecar service pattern, where like you have an API server and then a proxy. They both have to connect to each other and both have to be running like on the same machine in order to expose your service. And that hasn't been possible to describe really with Habitat. And so I'm working on a way to address that with what we're tentatively calling Composite Packages. And that's what I've got here is a plan.sh for defining one of these composite packages for our builder service. And you can sort of get an idea of what's happening here. I'm defining a bunch of services, like the Habitat identifiers for a bunch of services that I want to be in this composite. So basically, these are all the pieces of builder. So we've got front-end services, back-end services, our database, our job workers, everything's in there. And so if you want to, this is sort of a extreme case, it's not the sort of two service thing that I described earlier, but it can go up to extremes like this. If we want to run builder like on one machine, perhaps for development purposes or demo purposes, you could use this. One of the things that we're going to be doing is when you have services that are running together, they will most likely be binding together in some way. And it'd be nice to be able to sort of encapsulate those relationships here, so you don't have to manually manage them when you're running the services. So we have the idea of a binding map. So for example, this first line would say, for the API proxy service, I have a bind called HTTP, and I want it to be satisfied by the builder API service that is within this this composite. And so, as you can see, we've got all the binds for all of our services specified here. Some of them, like the job server, for instance, have multiple binds they need satisfied. So we want the router bind to be satisfied by our builder router service, and our data store bind to be satisfied by our builder data store service. So that's the way that you can specify all of that. And then another thing that we're working on is being able to sort of address distinct sets of these services sort of by name. So like if you want to run all of builder, we'll be tweaking the HAB CLI to recognize this. You could basically say like the equivalent of like run the all set, and that would fire up all of the services in this package. Or if you only need to run, if you only want to run the front end services on a particular machine, you could say run front end. So you could specify these however you want to. And I've just been able to get this, actually building a package in the studio here, and there's some debugging output that you can see here that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. So when we're specifying all these binds, we want to be sure at build time that what we're defining is actually going to work. So we want to know, can Builder API satisfy the HTTP bind of API proxy? Do all those work out? Also, are all of these services actually services? Like, do they have run scripts? And so we've got a lot of logic in the build process that actually will verify that all that stuff is correct, so that you can be confident once you install this, everything will fit together the way that it needs to. And so right now, these things are basically just, the packages are basically just collections of metadata. And you can, you can see, like, once we've validated everything, we render it out into metadata files, just like in a normal Habitat package. And the next thing I'll be working on is taking this and, all right, let's stop that.
It has to happen at least once.
Yeah. So the next thing I'll be working on is modifying HAB to deal with these kind of composite packages and make it actually run all these things for you. But that's a sort of sneak peek, work in progress.
Coming along so good. Coming along so good. I really wanted us to give a sneak peek of this because it's a feature that's been awaited by a number of people, and also immediately useful by, like we have a Postgres plan that we've been working on to improve that also does backups for you, and it needs another process to run for it to effectively do the thing that it's supposed to do. And this feature, when it lands, will enable that plan to behave the way it needs to. So this is a really exciting one for us. All right, Salim, you got some stuff here for Builder.
Yeah, let me share my screen. So basically, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Sure can.
Okay, great. For some reason I thought lost audio. Okay, so what I'm going to show is basically a starting point for us starting to handle secrets being injected into the HAB Builder. And the scenario there is really about having Builder do some external functionality. Let's say it might be an export of a HAB package once it's done building to a Docker hub, and you might need those Docker credentials to be injected into Builder. So you want to be able to obviously do that in a safe, secure way. So this is just one way. We'll have multiple ways of being able to get secrets into your HAB Builder workflow, but this is just one way that we're starting out with. It's a command called HAB Builder Encrypt. So let's say I've got some credentials, I've got them in a JSON file here, some simple stuff, and I'm going to then say, just pipe them into HAB Builder Encrypt command, and it does a bunch of stuff. It gets the public key that it needs from Builder to do the encryption, and then it gives you a little bit of a encrypted blob of what you piped into it. And then that blob can be used and put into a Builder TOML file or some other way. And then when the worker actually needs to decrypt it, it'll be able to do that because it's encrypted with the Builder key. So that's the demo. This is not released yet, but it'll be out there shortly.
Awesome work, man. All right. Last up is Fletcher.
Okay. Where is that screen? All right. So this is also some work in flight, and you'll notice we've got a lot of work in flight, which probably means at some point there's going to be a lot released, and this is all sort of swirling around work in the next month or so that'll be kind of landing. So while all this might seem scattered, it's actually all a pretty unified thing. So what I've been kind of working on, and this is a bit more down in the weeds, but it might be familiar to some people who have already been taking Habitat services and making Docker images from them. So this is a bit of a refactor to our Docker exporting, with the goal eventually that bldr will be able to hopefully do a better job and help us once you're rebuilding your packages and your services. It'd be nice if there was a way to have a bit more automatic like follow on to like build and publish some of these Docker images in a bit more intelligent way. One of the downsides to a fast-moving early stage project is a lot of the first cuts of tools are sometimes not exactly prototype, but very quickly done, and it sort of gets the job done and you leave it there. So this was another case where adding a feature ended up being a little bit more work. So right now, the way that we export our Docker images is a series of like using our studio a little bit to give us sort of a clean room, and the hab command to install some packages, and another script to like tie stuff together, and then like shell out to Docker. So what I'm basically in the process of doing is kind of recombining these three different things into sort of one Rust code base. So if anyone's looked at what it takes to export a thing, this is a bit more like what the newer world will be, is just some hopefully relatively boring Rust code instead of looking across three different code bases. We've got a little bit of, for anybody who's looked at how like a studio gets created, this isn't exactly like the one-for-one, but this is about the simplest version that we need just for a minimal container. You can, I hope, appreciate that it's a little more straightforward. There's some parts of this that are actually even testable at the unit level, which is pretty nice. And kind of what we get out of this is a pretty similar thing. Again, this will be sort of hid behind that hab package export. Under the covers, what that actually is today is a shell script that runs with its dependencies and stuff, and most people don't care about that. The problem that we had, though, was that a lot of the workflows that people were using, that command worked best inside a studio directly after you had built something. And in our sort of in the bldr platform on the worker nodes, they need to have they need to be a bit more stateless or have less of that like deep context. So we need to be able to take like perhaps a heart on either on the file system or like a very specific artifact from a particular channel, pull that down and do the export without needing like that magic studio context around. So that's a kind of secondary goal. And I'm popping up into the root because there's a couple device files that need to get made. So this isn't really any different than what we have right now. Now you can watch me probably type my password in 3 times. This seems, yep. Let me go to this keyboard. There we go. So there you can see a few places where like there'll be a bit better messages, but what you're seeing is instead of like the shell script, some studio output, and some hab install commands, this is all basically one program. And the other benefit that we've got that kind of fell out is at least at the system level, like at the root level, we're benefiting from artifact caching, just like we kind of recently put into the studio. So I asked for a couple of packages, I think Redis and Nginx and the supervisor, but you can see that I downloaded a key right now and everything else was in my cache that got mounted in. And what we're doing is just creating sort of a temporary directory, and that's what our Docker image is going to be based on, and then doing some bin linking with some newer features that we didn't have available to us at the time. And what I can show you for the moment, kind of for the purpose of demo, this rootfs, think of that as this is what was going to be in the Docker image. And you can see it's kind of similar to sort of what we had before, all these hab things. Right now, the bin directory is a little more populated because we can do that more easily now. So this is everything in our busybox static, plus the hab command in a reasonable sane place, which means the path entry now only has to be one thing. We could get rid of a whole lot of these like the Linux file system standard directories because we just don't need them in this context, and that's something that Studio's still providing us with probably more directories than we ever needed. so that's an opportunity to make this a little bit, I hope, clearer to the end user. What's in here is you're really looking in the bin directory for like what's on path, what's on path that I can run, in the Habitat directory for what packages I have installed, and then I think a couple things in etc for like the normal things like resolving DNS and users and that kind of normal thing. So, and from there, we've got, I guess, the Docker image being created. There's a few outstanding issues that there'll probably be follow-on stuff like, could I somehow express my desire to run multiple services, and how might I then like give flags and stuff to those particular services? We may actually punt on some of that idea with Chris's demo earlier with the composite plans or those packages. You can see how that might sort of like dovetail in nicely to say, I need these things sort of more atomically in my image, and have a better way to like fire them up sort of in one invocation. So there's kind of a lot of like threading stuff together. And then kind of finally on this program command, whether that's a broken out subcommand or an optional thing, is the ability to then like directly take that Docker image, perhaps retag it, suitable for pushing to a place like the Docker Hub, and then to be able to provide credentials. And how would you provide credentials? Well, we'd encrypt it, which is the work that Salim's working on. So you can sort of see how these parts are sort of all threading through. And this will be something, as soon as it's kind of at least more or less minimally viable and about as equivalent to what we have now, and hopefully a little bit better, we'll just start pushing that out in sort of the next release. And hopefully some people won't know, it'll just be faster, but there'll be hopefully a little more features people can sort of dig in there.
All right, excellent work, man. Thank you for showing that. This is all work that's you can track on our project board. We also have our roadmap that's public. If you go to Habitat SH, the community tab, scroll down, you can see the roadmap and how, like Fletcher just gave you an idea of how this ties in with each other for the things that we're working on in the near term. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. See ya.